So hello, everyone. We are back with the open forum round, and all of our speakers are here, and we'll take the questions that we were not able to take before due to the time constraints now. But please feel free to post your questions right here, and to keep the conversation going on. So we'll start with the first speaker today, Carlos. So you have a question. Many startups hurry to get into as many projects as they can, often resulting to projects that are half-baked, I would say. How much workload in terms of project scale or project value should they take on, and for how long before they scale up? But that's an interesting question.
Well, actually, I was actually telling Nick earlier before in the backstage that I actually started from the bottom of the company. I mean, the other company, because I started this one. And the good thing with that is, in my case, is I've learned how to handle adjustments. I've learned how to handle maybe slowly going up and all evaluating my capacity as of the moment, as of that time, and was able to also discover at a certain stage in my career that okay, now I can handle this. Now before I was only handling five story structures, 6-story structures. Then after a while, I've been targeting 11-story structures, more than 10-story structures. So it's that there will come a point that you will really evaluate that you need to step up or level up in terms of your practice. The good thing is, and but the challenge on that is how well are you prepared? It's not about you wanting more, but it's more of wanting more and being able to do it in the first place. So it's definitely a challenge for everyone to when to know to scale up in terms of projects. So prepare, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be prepared in scaling up in those projects and how to handle different scales of projects in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carl.
I answered that clearly. Sorry.
No, you answered quite clearly. I hope that the audience got the message very clearly. Does anybody want to add something here, or should I proceed to the next question?
Just a little thing, really, just to say it's always good to push yourself, but you have to push yourself within your limits. So, don't be ridiculous, because ultimately, if you push yourself too much and you let your client down, then, and this is exactly what you said in your talk, Carlo, that your clients come back to you because you've done a good job. So if you let them down, they won't come back to you. So it's always good to try and do something new, but just, do it within.
Yeah.
Yeah, a point well made, Nick. So I'll go forward with Christina. Well, somebody said, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. The question is it okay to add additional element to our vision? And if yes, when should we do it? Thank you.
Well, I think it's a fair question. I mean, as a thorough project manager, I would say, change as early as possible, of course. So, but of course, the vision needs to be right. The client needs to be happy with the end product. So, for example, if I always like to bring examples. So, I worked for 5 years on a major facade retention scheme in a very prominent spot in London, and the vision didn't really change, but the technical details changed. So the vision was to create a landmark building and a go-to place, and it changed the retail scene of London, which, if you know London, it's pretty much Oxford Street. And they were at the other end, they were at Marble Arch, and they really, the vision was to get people to go from Oxford Street to Marble Arch, and to make this a flagship retail unit. And the detailed brief actually changed during the course of the project. So we started with a light-up refurb, and then we thought, well, actually, let's do this so we get a better end product. So it was always with the end product in mind. So I think, well, it's not a straightforward answer, but I think the end vision didn't change, therefore, but it's the strategy and the user requirements I was mentioning before which changed. But maybe it happens that the vision changes as well because your environment changes. I mean, we're now in a global pandemic, and maybe your surroundings, your environment change, which make you amend your vision. But I would say as early as possible, because then as a As a project manager, I have cost and time in mind. The later you bring a change to a vision, the more probably you have challenges to overcome later.
Thank you, Christina. I think here Nick or Adesh would also like to add something, because Adesh quite mentioned a lot about the vision and the mindset that we're talking right now. Would you like to add something, Adesh?
I think what Christina has said is absolutely right. The visioning process is much more longer dimension. And even when we see hurdles, mitigating those hurdles will be more towards finding the new strategic ways to achieve your ultimate vision. Visualize benefits. Those don't change often. I mean, you have taken the climate change as a vision, Paris Agreement. So there would be hiccups, no doubt. But vision changes only, not that kind of long-term vision. It cannot change, whatever the obstacles may be. But in short term, your strategy may change when you find some disruptive environment like a pandemic. So your vision of doing something in a traditional work is no more going to be working, because work from home, a new environment, a new relationship is emerging. But vision might not change to be still number one or whatever you want to be. So the way of doing something may change, but plan A may not change. Plan A1, A2, A3 may come through. But that way, I agree, the vision is a more permanent asset based on thinking. For example, India was a colonial country, and our vision was, it took 100 years, 150, 200, it doesn't matter. The vision was to be emancipated. So that vision has not changed. It has taken more time. We have hurdles. We have some disadvantages, some failures, many failures. But so that way one has to see the visioning process. How do you break down the visioning process into subcomponents? And the subcomponents of visioning process become strategies.
Thank you, Adesh, for your insights here. So other question is for Nick. So Nick, what are the biggest challenges you encountered in handling a team with members of different cultures due to ethnicity, gender, etc.? How did you handle such challenges?
Okay, so there's a couple of answers to this, which I hope you'll find quite interesting. So, firstly, so we went from, I think I mentioned about 12 people when I joined the Wave to about 175 4 years later. So that's a massive increase in people. So, and what you have to do in different cultures is to understand where they're coming from. So I always try and do the personal thing to start with. So with, us kind of Western people are my kind of thing. You go and watch the rugby with them, or you go and have a drink with them, or whatever you would do. And you'd celebrate, the religious festivals and that kind of thing with them. You do actually the same thing with all the other cultures. So clearly one of the most sensitive things in the Middle East is that most of the population don't drink alcohol. So, but they like to party just the same as everyone else. So, and their religious festivals are very, very important to them. Eid, for example. So we would run basically events for all of the various nationalities. And in Oman, it was particularly the Middle Eastern people, so mostly Omani, but there were some Emiratis there too. The Indian population in Oman is huge. So Diwali was a huge event. We had, all the cakes, the multicolored things going on, and all of the things, the very colorful dresses. All the ladies would get dressed up, and we'd have that kind of party. And then things like Anzac Day for the Australians and New Zealand people, we would celebrate that. So that's on a sort of social front, and that actually, and everybody gets invited to all of them. So the only thing you have to be a little bit careful with is the alcohol thing, because there are some people that go along who can't be seen with it. But actually, there were only a very, very few people in our team who couldn't be in the same place as an alcohol drink. And actually that is a lot of fun because, so for example, you might find this very amusing, but I had some clothes made for me by a famous Indian designer, and I went on the catwalk to model these clothes. And it's the kind of thing you do. And when you've done it, a lot of the Indian people and people from the subcontinent came along and said, well, you were very brave to do it. And actually, we enjoyed it. It was fun. And that builds the team thing. So the second thing that was very interesting is particularly, and please don't take this the wrong way, but the traditional Omani lady is supposed to be staying at home. They have a home role. And actually, we had a lot of them want to join us because we were a flagship development. We were, as I've said, the vision was to make it the best, one of the best things in the world. And we won lots of awards. So they actually, a lot of the ladies in town that had been educated at secondary level and indeed at the Sultan Qaboos University wanted to join us. So they came along, and they used to really like to be mentored by the Western men, because there was always a thought process for them and or their fathers that the Omani men would only be interested in taking them as a wife and wouldn't be interested in their career. So this had to be very carefully handled, but we did handle it. And so the human resource team, which was made up of men and ladies, would allocate would carefully make sure that the ladies were coached by appropriate people who were interested in their career and not marrying them, put it that way. So that was another way we did it, but we didn't get it all right. And I mentioned time. The worst thing to say to someone from Oman was, you have to decide now. You have to sign this now, or you have to do this now. And that would just not work. Deadlines and time sort of dealt with like that, whereas in a Western world, you can say, I need it and I need it now. You can't actually, that doesn't work in that culture. So there was a learning process for me in that as well. And but ultimately, we got over those particular challenges. And as you saw from one of my pictures, we had actually a pretty harmonious team, and things worked very well. And in fact, they worked better than they would have done with people from the same culture and the same gender and whatever. It was a lot of fun to see other people's views and to understand where people would come from, what their philosophy was and how we could design our houses, put in, kitchens that were going to be exciting for different cultures, do different bathroom designs, design the streets in a way that people would feel safe, etc. Because that is all very different in different religions and different cultures. So the designers were involved too. A long-winded answer, but basically there is a process, and what you absolutely cannot do as an expat is turn up in a place like that and say, this is how we do it. It won't work. You lose your job immediately. You actually have to listen and try and understand it. And that took me a long while. It took me a year or so to get it. And the guys that were in the picture with me, with my chairman, they were like my mentors. So I had two Omani mentors, my deputy CEO and the guy who ran the communications team, who would, take me to one side and say, this is how we do it here. And, please understand, Nick, and whatever. So without them, I would have been sunk.
Well, thank you, Nick. Well, I can relate to that completely. I come from India, but have been working in Germany since the last 1.5 years now. And there were some cultural shifts, I would say. Well, with due respect to Indians, but we have a different kind of culture and the way we meet and we treat each other, or we greet each other, I would say. And for us, it was always, okay, we have a meeting, but we'll take some kind of breaks in between. But in Germany, it doesn't work that way. When the meeting can go along for 6 hours, maybe 7 hours without taking a coffee break even. And 10-14 means 10-14 years, not 10-15 and not 10-12. So these were some cultural shifts that a bit of a shock for me in the beginning, but I have somehow survived. So I can totally relate to Nick, whatever you said, that you need some time to, just get into sync with the world that you're working now. So yeah, definitely. So we have one more question now for Carlos. So Carlos, how do you manage the balance of potential economic pressures versus innovation, new ideas from your team? That is, there is no fun to do any extras or invest in a new technology, etc. I'm not sure if I was quite clear. Maybe I can read the question again, Carlos, if you didn't get it.
Yes, please, kindly do.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So how do you manage the balance of potential economic pressures in these times versus innovative new ideas from your team? That is, there is no fun to do any extra or invest in a new technology, etc. Now I got it right.
Okay. Definitely. Of course, in handling a business, economics is always important, because that's the main purpose of having a business. You don't start a business just to have just to entertain just to entertain and spend, and have it not come back to you as an investment. But of course, especially in communicating and having relationships with younger generations, and also those who know more, who can provide fresh ideas. Personally, I welcome it, because I've been trained with in an office who handles innovative building technologies, and we as every time our principal architect, Florentino, always presents a new idea, a new construction building system, we would always try to first question it in terms of constructive criticism, as I think it was Christina or Nick mentioned earlier in one of the slides, in terms of constructive criticisms. We try to challenge it, not to shift to another plan, but to somehow just to prove that it will work, and it will, for example, also challenge the scenario of what if, and then come up with a possible solution to those questions, so that we will be able to be more prepared in handling the uncertainties. Same thing with the ideas of innovative ideas that our colleagues may be suggesting. Same approach that I will be going there. If it's going to be economically advantageous to the company, will it be economically advantageous to the project, to the client? It depends. I will not automatically reject it if it would entail cost initially. But we, as planners, we would always look at the longer picture, at the bigger picture, and the longer run of the company. So, entertaining those ideas are welcome, as long as, of course, you have to check first, in terms of those viabilities of those suggestions and innovations that our colleagues are also suggesting. I think I got it.
Thank you, Carlos. We have a follow-up question to Adesh, actually, on the same matter. And the question is, Adesh, how do you balance risk avoidance with new innovation and methods where there are likely to be more unknowns? So do you think innovation has a part to play? Adesh, you're mute, actually.
Yeah. No. The biggest risk is not to do innovation. So the biggest risk is not to do innovations. Innovation cannot give you risk. Not innovating will make you dead. So within the innovation framework, the risk which will come in terms of technological adaptation, new data points to be collected, there is a risk in innovation in itself. But innovation per se is must survive. Mental survival, not a Darwin's survival of the physical bodies. The mental survival means disruptions. So the biggest risk which we are going to face is somehow people at some stage, they say this is a pressure, we cannot invest in R&D, AI, innovation, new way of thinking, they are under pressure. They will always remain under pressure till the time they are perished. Pressure is not the answer, not to innovate. It is under pressure many innovations take place. Because under pressure, you have to innovate. So I would say innovation per se and risk avoidance, I think these are two different types of things. So that is my very belief that to innovate is reducing risk.
Thank you, Adesh. Yeah, thank you very much for the follow-up question. So I have one more question for Christina. So I think this has also something to do with the plan A and plan B, the different challenges that we have to face when going with the different strategies. So the question is, Christina, thank you for some wonderful points made. Do you think that plan B or option A.2 per se is something that everybody needs to be aware of from the beginning, or an ace at the PM sleeve? Wow, nice one.
Well, to be honest, completely in line with all what we heard today. I'm a strong believer that team is paramount. So, it could be that the mitigation strategy, it could well be that it actually comes from someone within your team, maybe someone with a particular expertise who points something out you personally as a project manager haven't seen. So I would definitely say it's a team effort, and matters should be discussed with the team. And of course you have your tools like your risk and opportunities register and your discussion, your risk workshops Philips was mentioning before, etc. So but my view would be it's a team effort. I think if there are elements you think yourself, and I think you need to be careful not to jeopardize or distract your team. So maybe there's a fine balance of keeping an internal client project manager risk register. I've done this before where I've set like client risks, and I differentiated between client risks and contingency plans and the team and project risk. Because as I said before, I think it's a very, very fine balance between having your mitigation strategy and distracting the team, would be my take on that question.
Yeah,
Thank you, Christina. I think this is...
Sorry,
Nick, you can continue.
I think that's where Arnie was coming from. So, yes, he was plan A all the way through, and we get that. And I think that's where he's coming from, that it can be distractive or you can imagine people saying, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be doing because I thought we were going down this route, but now we're also thinking about this route. But, worst case scenario, so we had a sales launch. And what happened was we were due to do this on a Saturday, and on a Sunday, actually, first working day of the week in Oman. And by Friday night, we had over 200 people queuing up in tents on the main road, waiting for the sales launch. So luckily, we had a plan B, and we'd put a tent up because we couldn't have these people queuing up on a main road. There was going to be an accident. So actually, we got them into the site, put them in our big tent that we had. We actually stayed up all night long. We gave them a number so that they kept their same number of priority. We sent some of them home. Some of them wouldn't go home because they were so desperate to buy. So our plan B actually came in. It wasn't our plan, but it was our backup plan. So, and everybody knew that. So it in that particular instance, it worked well. So, and the truth of the matter is, after the end of 2008, when there was a banking crisis in the world, we didn't have queues anymore because, the demand had dissipated. So I think, the plan B at that time was, well, we're going to put houses on the market, and if they don't sell because of the banking crisis, then, okay, we'll try and sell them next year, or we'll, change our design. So plan B is always good, but Arnie's point, which Christina was making, is really valid. You have to have your plan A, and your plan A is the most important plan.
I like to just, can I Geet, can I talk?
With pleasure, sir. You can.
You see, I think I have some fundamental issues with Plan A, Plan B, and I'm not sure how to put it through. There is no Plan B, in my opinion. I think when we say Plan B, when we're running a plan, when we're running a project, when we say Plan B, it's not to change Plan A. Plan A always remains. There is only one plan. When we say Plan B, it is misused in my view. It's not Plan B. It is to the extent of alternatives. In case if this happens, how do I flow my water? But within the same plan A, which is one plan, there is no A and B. A and B will come as Norwegians say. Which project should I take? Which program should I take? Project A, Project B, Project C. At that level of front-ending, quality assurance, there are various alternatives which are distinctly different. But once you decide with all the mitigation and risk that I'm going to build a bridge, you're going to build bridge. You're not going to have plan B to build a small river or river small group. No. Plan A remains there till the end of the project. When we say alternative, we misconstrue to it as a plan B. It's not plan B. It's a mitigation strategies. As Christiana talks very rightly, A1, A2, A3. These are alternatives for that particular component. If this doesn't work, how do I do a different way? So the different way is a different plan within that component, not within the overall perspective of the project.
Hagit, if I may
Yes.
add,
Yes.
was originally my question. I thank you very much, both Adish and Nick. It's fantastic to have your contributions, and I would absolutely like to underline what Adish has just said. And I think Nick's, just to go back to Nick's example, which I love. For me, I would say the vision was to have a great sales event. That was plan A. So you haven't really changed that. You just made it safer. So I think, I know it's a bit of play with words, and I think we can move on now as well. But I think it wasn't actually a plan B. It was a mitigation to make your sale event safe, and that's what you had to do. So it's about having a contingency, I agree, and make sure everything is safe and as risk-free as we can make it. And I applaud to your foresight of having the tent ready for 200 people. So well done.
Thank you, Christina. I think we started a controversy here about Plan A, Plan B, and the visions, but I think that's the whole purpose of this event. Really think about what are we doing, what are we going, or where are we going? We just need reminders, and I'm really loving it. I think this could be like one of the topics that we could take to another conference and have a deep discussion, because somehow it's in our deep roots, it's embedded. We have different definitions of vision, goals, Plan A, Plan B, strategies. And somehow it's quite different. So I think, it's a fantastic topic for the next time. So proceeding forward with, I have another question for Carlos. So there's a question for Carlos. Thank you, Carlo. Fantastic points. Couldn't agree more. How do you deal with clients who are more result-driven and not necessarily as appreciative of the people-focused approach, especially during periods where workload might be thin?
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, projects are really result-driven. That's the main point of a project. That's the main point of a product, or any even manufacturing. It's result-driven. What we're talking about, what we just want to the client to realize is the people working for them or working with them to realize their intended result, their expected result for a project. It doesn't mean that we give importance to our team, but we always would like to tell the client that we will always boast it to the client. But it depends on our stakeholders. It depends on how we communicate and what the clients expect. We always have to adjust to our clients, definitely. But of course, what I'm trying to say is how we, as employers, as company owners, try to handle our people so that our people, our team works hard also for us, for the company, which therefore, of course, provides the result that the client is waiting for. So it's really on how you approach and communicate and manage your stakeholders' expectations. It's a different thing for every project. I agree. When those clients arrive, you really have to understand how they talk, especially how they talk. I've encountered different clients from different cultures, different dialects or different accents, and so you really have to listen clearly on what they're trying to say, not just in terms of their vocabulary or words and how they say it. So it really points down to how you would accomplish what they really want in terms of what they really want to get from their project and from your services. So going bottom line, it's really a result driven endeavor. Project management, construction project management, especially in construction, is result driven. It's just a matter of how high, how low, or what's the client's expectation is, and that's the challenge actually for project managers to provide to their clients. Yeah.
Very well said, Carlos. Does anybody want to add to it? Okay, then I will add something. Very well said, Carlos. I completely agree. Sometimes you have to listen more than always thinking to reply back, because until you really listen carefully, like I think Nick mentioned or somebody mentioned today in one of the presentations, that when we play with somebody, we know them better rather than having a conversation for the whole year. I'm sure like Nick mentioned or Christina, not sure, but somebody did today. Okay. So I completely agree with that. Sometimes you have to really know the people you're working with. And as my professor used to say, there are two kinds of clients. One is the dentist with a lot of money, but not too much knowledge about the construction. And one is the contractor with not so much money, but a lot of knowledge about the construction. So you have to know what kind of people are you working for to have a result-driven projects. So another question for Adesh. So the question is, should project mindset be continuous throughout the project cycle? What's your take on that?
As I mentioned in these 5 slides, combination of project mindset and operational mindset, the holistic versus part. I mean, you can define that in various ways. They coexist. They are the two sides of the same coin. In the beginning of the project life cycle, or in the early stages of vision formulation, you need more of the project mindset, looking at holistically, not jumping into the operational level, delivery level, because that would be ground level. So at 220, 110 volts or high energy level, you need more innovations, more out-of-box thinking, non-traditional way, learning from everybody, collecting more data points, looking at the larger time perspective within the project, 3, 4, 5. So that is very heavily at the beginning of the front ending. Later on, when things are getting more refined, you know what you want to do, then you should be operational productivity in the sense, efficiency. That comes the operational. So both coexist. So it is right to say the project mindset is continuous, because within the operations, the project mindset will create mind ready to innovate. So innovation do not take place discretely. Innovations takes place on a continuous basis. Something you see and you create opportunity out of it. So the level of project mindset, if I may say, may vary, but it exists throughout, along with the later part with operations.
Thank you, Adesh. We have a question for everyone here. So it's a question from Daniel, and he says, I know this is a bit personal, but I hope it's okay to ask, what is your inspiration? Why did you choose to become a construction project manager? There are a lot of professional paths to take, but why construction project manager? Thank you. Wow. So who would like to start?
Yeah, if I may, Hargeet.
Sure, Carlo.
Yeah, I would like to answer first and foremost, why? Because Daniel is one of our project engineers in our projects. So I would like to answer first for that. Well, basically, to be honest with you, I'm an architect by profession. I have a license for as an architect and an urban planner. How did I go into construction project management? I think it's by luck, if I may, or by faith, if I may say that, because one of the projects that I also was involved with in Singapore at the time, I was involved in one of the project management groups, and then I was inspired by that group on how they handle projects. I was there as part of that architectural team, but when I encountered how they handled the project, how they handled stakeholders, and when then I was inspired by that by other companies, and after that I was already researching on what really project management is, and after that I think that was around 12 years ago, and after that I really started preparing myself based on those standards and based on those guidance. What inspired me actually is it's not basically the company itself, but how they handle the project, more of their practice. It's not. And I forgot the name of the company, but the people I encountered, I still remember right now, and how they talked, how they managed the conflicts, especially conflicts on the project, and how they talk to other nationalities and how to mitigate their temper, the tempers flaring all over the meeting, how they try to control those tempers and personalities. Those were the events that actually inspired me to venture also. It's not a plan B, I agree. It's more of an expansion of your practice. I'm still an architect. I still do design. I still do urban planning. It's just an expansion of your practice. It's not actually plan B. It's having wider range of services that you can offer. So yeah, that's on my take on that question. Thank you.
Can I add to that? Yeah.
Sure.
So for most of you, you know that I'm a strong I lobby or I champion for the development of skills beyond design. And when I started, way back in school, just like Carlo, I'm a licensed architect, but I practice as a construction project manager. So when I started, before I started working, my best subjects were all design. I loved it. But there are certain constraints that you have to consider when you enter the job market. So when at the time I entered the job market, and I think it is the same until now, the there's just too much supply for design professionals. And if you want to make a niche, I think it takes longer for anyone who's entering the job market or the workforce to be able to penetrate that market where his skills become a necessity or a necessity. So when I entered, that was a constraint. I decided I will not work for design firms who pay really, really, really low, because they know there are a lot of applicants who are willing to take on that job. So I took a risk. I took on a construction project management job, and what I discovered is that it was a fun job. I started out in the field. I saw, unlike most of my contemporaries, where they see the development of a project on paper, I see it come to life. I see it taking shape every day. So I learned how to be more curious about how things are being done, because I see it. I see it right before my eyes. I go to the site every day. I feel everything, not just a piece of pen and paper. When I entered, CAD was just a new technology that was being introduced in offices. So it was still basically pen and paper. So, but I've grown to love the field. What people would normally consider as noise in the field, I would consider music to my ears. The sound of the heavy equipment creaking while it's doing its stuff, the sound of metal hitting each other, and all these noises were music, because I know that if these were all realities that I have to experience to see the fruition of whatever design that was given to us. So I took that path. Do I still love design? I would I would still do design if a good opportunity comes up. But would I leave what I do? No. Would I do it all over again? Definitely yes. I'd go back to school and take exactly the same path that I did 18 years ago and still be in this field of practice. Because nothing can be more fulfilling than seeing that you are not just setting up the technical aspects of work, but you are helping the owners with the commercial aspects of the project and the legal aspects of the project. And to me, being a construction project manager is the fruition of everything that you learn in school: technical, commercial, and legal. And so I decided to move forward in this path, and I'll continue doing that because I love it. I simply love this profession, and that's why we're having the summit for everyone to know that construction project management is a field that is exciting and that is worth taking or pursuing.
I think we all are getting emotional now because this is very personal question to all of us. Yeah, definitely.
So I'm just going to say just a couple of things. So I got into this. My father was an architect, and so very early age, I was in my pram, being wheeled around by my mother and father, being shown all these buildings, and I was much more interested in what I was going to have for my dinner. So it was in my blood. But unlike most of the other people on this panel, I didn't have the talent to be an architect. It wasn't for me. But I realized that cities and building places and that kind of thing was much more my scene. So I became an urban designer because of that, because that links development, the financial side of how you get places built, like the V&A waterfront in Cape Town, and like the waterfront in Sydney, and the project that I've shown you. These things, Covent Garden. There's a million places in the world you go and you think, oh, I'd love this place. I need to come back here again. So that was much more me. So motivate, and why wouldn't I change? And the answer to that is another example. So we had some tough times in Muscat trying to get this big project together, and the team were particularly down one day. Some things had not gone right for us. Some permission had not come through or something, and I could tell there was a bit of what are we doing here kind of thing going on in the team. So I actually got two coaches, buses. I hired two buses, and I got every single person in the office. We worked on site, but it was a huge site, and it was the middle of the summer, so it was so hot. I put every single person in one of these buses with a bottle of water, and I said, right, we're going to go and have a look, and I'm going to show you what we've done. And we got the buses to drive around all those buildings and the bit in the ocean and all of this. And everyone came back and said, wow. And I said, yeah, you've done that in 2 years. You couldn't do that anywhere else in the world. Look what you've done. You look what you've achieved. And, everyone said, oh, wow. Yeah, that's really good. And then everyone starts to be really motivated. So, and, you go there now and you think I was part of that, for a few years, and it'll be there forever. So it's a fantastic thing. And when your kids go there and see it, and it's just a brilliant thing. So I think other than being, the lead singer in a rock band, I wouldn't change anything.
Really nice, Nick. I would like to listen to you someday. Okay, who wants to go next? Christina, please. Yes.
Yeah. Really, really enjoyed the individual stories. I love it when it gets a bit more personal, actually, because, it's almost like the play, a reference. It was actually Plato, so it's not even, one of us. I think it was Plato, that statement about the hour of play. You learn more about a person than in a year of conversation. Well, my story is a little bit different, and I'm a bit conscious of time to not drag on too long, but actually I studied architecture, but the university I've chosen was a technical university, and my diploma was in cost and project management already. So that is something in Germany you can select, you do. And so I knew fairly early on that I love creativity, I love design and building, but I knew early on I'm a person who likes to organize and communicate with people. So that is actually the summary I gave to my 7-year-old child when he asked me, Mum, what do you do? Because it's difficult. How do you describe to a 7-year-old what project management is? You know, in simple terms, because it's so complex. It's actually organizing people and communication. So that was my summary. And that is the key for me. So it's about, organize something, bring structure into chaos, but communicate and work with the people. So that was my summary. And I go a step further, and I know it was touched upon in some talks as well, but it's a bit bold, but I think you're probably born to be a project manager. You have to bring certain characteristics to the table. I think you need to be open. You need to like people generally and be with people. So you ask for their questions and you, oh gosh, love it. The audience is joining me. So I love that we all agree on that one. So again, it was said, I think it was Carla who said, technical skill set is one thing, but you can teach people that. But the person you can't change, the characteristic you can't change. So my view would be you need to be born. It's almost a calling to be a construction project manager. And totally agree with you, Brian. I love the smell of concrete and fresh paint. So yes, I love to be on site as well. That was, and final point, the other really positive thing, if you look at all the construction related occupations, is that in our role, we are lucky enough to be right at the start, talking to the client all the way through. So I think there's hardly a role on the construction industry job where you're there talking about the vision and you're there at the end handing over the key, and there's never ever a point in time where you actually take the backstage seat. The positive thing is you're always responsible, so it's a big responsibility. The negative thing is you're sometimes the one who's always blamed. But I think that's the two hats we have to wear, and we just have to wear it with pride and find solutions if there's a problem, as Nick said, and sometimes maybe get the team together. Thank you.
Oh, Christine, I can totally relate to that.
I'll be very, very brief because time is running short. But I think my passion is for project management. I think my blood group seems to be PM. And this started way back when after my engineering in the control in Canada, I got involved in highly technical Department of Defense projects, artificial intelligence, and pattern recognition. So after 3 years of doing that, and right from the beginning, I was more softer dimension in terms of human side. I was very much early from my childhood. I was very close to the human side, people, how to build up together. So after 3-4 years of technological breakthroughs, many publication, finally I decided I should move up into higher responsibility of integrating people, integrating their vision and my vision to create some product. So I think that's how it started way back, long years ago. And I think since then, I had a fortunate to have responsibilities of integrating people's ideas, working together and doing miraculously well in achieving something which people could not achieve earlier. It was primarily because of team. 80%, 83% is soft side, below the iceberg. And 1/6, 17% is technical side. The thing which you see, the technological side. So ultimately it is the 5/6 or 83% which holds the key for integration, for construction project management, for project management, for building teams. And everything is construct. You construct your ideas, you construct your dreams, you construct your IT products. So I would say construct is a generic term, but the hardcore infrastructure, it requires people, but at the same time, people will like to be in the air-conditioned environment, unfortunately. They will not like to opt for the construction side which is a dream, which is something beyond. Very, very, very fascinating to see something coming up. So I would say the construction project management is more innovative. You can see what you are building day to day. You don't have to wait for the end of the project. So that's how I started my career of project management.
Thank you, Adesh. That's really inspiring. So as Christina and Adesh already mentioned, we are a little bit behind time. So I would request all of the speakers, we still have a lot of questions. So I'll ask them one by one, and I'll just ask you all to please keep it simple and short. And for more details, if somebody wants, please, they can contact the speakers themselves. Yeah. So not to be rude, but I hope that's quite fair to the speakers and the audience as well. So for Carlo, we have another question. How do you instill a strong sense of responsibility and initiative to your team members, especially those are still young? How to inspire them to think that the project success depends on the whole team and not just on the leader? That's a nice one.
Thank you. Actually, our team composition in our project sites are mainly younger generation. So that question is really, it really relates to us because our team maybe is around, most of our project engineers at the site are less than 30 years old. They're very young. And the good thing about it also is it's easier for them to be molded in the right, for me, it's easier for them to be inspired. It's easier for them to be inspired and molded into what we really need to do in our projects. I've been a professor in a university, which some of my colleagues are here. I can see them. Good evening to everyone. Then I was able to interact with students in a college level. I was able to know how to approach them and somehow inspire them. Actually, I'm teaching architecture also before, and I told them in your whole class, how can you offer more? How can you, besides you all architects going out after your graduation, how can you offer more in terms of when you go out, as what Brian has mentioned? So in terms of how in instilling responsibility to the younger generation, it's easier because, as I said, it's a positive and a negative aspect of having too much experience or having none or having little, because in that case you can somehow still mold this very fine glass which is still fragile in terms of how to mold it into the proper professional, or maybe the guidance that you have to provide to them might be easier for them to accept. I think that's for me, it's easier actually to a great responsibility to the younger generations compared to, not to offend, of course, our older colleagues. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Hargit.
Thank you, Carlos. We have another follow-up question for you. Is giving incentives to a good performer in a team a good idea? Does it equate cooperation is better than competition? I think you really elaborated on this point before as well, but what's your take on that?
Well, it's how you approach it, and it's how you announce it to your team. Of course, you have to really recognize when someone's if someone's working and exceeding your expectations from what they're supposed to do. You have to acknowledge those things because it helps them be inspired to proceed and to continue what they're doing. You cannot. It's like children. You don't need to compare, but you can just tell everyone he's doing good. So let's go out to pizza parlor and eat, because one of your brothers are doing good. Same thing with in a team. You don't, you just highlight it, but you don't tell he's better or she's better than you guys. It's not. It's a different thing. So it's a matter of how you approach and how you provide the information to the rest of your team. It should be inspiring. It should not be a competitive. Though there's always a competitive side, but it should not be on a negative aspect in being competitive. It should be inspiring actually. And I think some of them are. That's why it's also important to build a good culture in one's company, because they will, as was inquired earlier about politics, office politics. So having a good culture, somehow you'll encounter that problem less in your company. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. We have another question for Nick. So, Nick, wonderful ideas about leadership. Do you think we can teach or learn leadership in construction, or is it a natural born skill? In Finland, that skill is highly expected among young professionals. I think that was from Nika, yes.
Hello, Mika. I've seen you in the audience. I've been expecting something from you. I would expect no less. The truth is, leadership can be taught, yes, and there are some people who are natural leaders, of course, but leadership qualities and skills can be taught. So coaching is a very, it's a very up-to-date thing. Many people are coached. I was lucky enough to be asked when I was a much younger person whether I'd like to have some coaching, and I have had plenty of it, and I'm still learning, as many of the speakers have said today. But no one is perfect, and everybody makes mistakes. But there's no doubt that certain leadership skills, empathy, learning to be humble, learning to share your mistakes, actually is one of the very hardest things to do and to talk through. So being a CEO is the best job in the world, but it's also the loneliest because there's only one of you. So sometimes you do need, to be able to talk to someone in your team about things that haven't gone so well or ideas you've got. So some people find that much harder than others to do. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's absolutely the opposite. It's a sign of strength.
Thank you, Nick. We have another question for Adesh, but I think he's not in the audience at the moment. Oops. Adesh is back. Adesh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a question for you, Adesh. I think it's a follow-up question, what Nick said right now. So somebody's asking, I would mention the name actually because we have the question here. Yeah, that's a question from Henry. And he's saying for Adesh, for the E4s that you mentioned, should another E be added in another classification of ethical or ethics? What's your take on that?
I would say ethics may not necessarily be added, but ethics is a common. Ethics should not be changing with people to people. There's a hard work, honest work, intellectual work, ethical work, moral work. There are not too many variations. People may have different variations, but they should not have different variations. But education, experience, expectations, and emotions, they are very, very distinct. They cannot be same ever. You cannot say that this should be the emotions. So ethics should not be, in my opinion, be part of E4, or it could be to make it E5. Because I think there's a certain common denominator. And ethics, as you said so rightly, is very important. And that should be the basic denominator on which E4 exists. But within the E4, I mentioned that time, there are two types of E4. The hard E4, hard and soft. The hard, which may not change much, like the education and the experience may go very gradually. So they don't change much. But the softer dimensions of the last two E, emotions and expectations, they are not static, they're more dynamic. Education is more static. So I would say there's different theories coming up, how to balance behavior and the technical part. So I would not say that here at this stage, but I think it's a good point. I will again think about it later. But in my view, ethics is not something which is unique to individuals.
Thank you, Adesh. Would somebody like to add something here? I'm looking at some smiles. No, so I think everyone agreed with Adesh at this point. So Adesh, we have another question for you. And I think that was from Brian. So it's in striking the balance between the safety of tradition and the uncertainty of innovation, how much do we take from each to make the balance? 50-50, 30-70, 10-90, or the most radical 0 to 100?
It is not a quantifiable measure at all. Brian, is a very good question you ask. It's not quantifiable. It dynamically changes like stock exchanges. But I would say Traditional would be very heavy when the rate of change is relatively low. The olden days, the agricultural age, the industrial age, earlier part. But the traditional things will be much less in comparison when the rate of change is exponential or very rapid. Well, it's the rate of change which will define traditional versus innovation. Today's context, innovation will be primary, but within the construction industry, or within the framework of our whatever we want to do, there's a certain amount of traditions which needs to be maintained. And I think, so this question which you're asking, 50-50 or whatever it is, I would say I will put more emphasis within the rigidity. You need to have more flexibility. You need rigidity and flexibility, two sides of the same coin. Rigidity is tradition, innovation is flexible. So other way of looking at this is rigidity and flexibility, two sides of the same coin, but they're not equal ever in today's age.
Well said, Adesh. Actually, on the day second, we talked a lot about digitalization and the innovation that needs to be brought up in the industry and what wonders we can do to it. I personally gave a small presentation based on my research, how we can break the unproductivity in the construction industry by introducing the digital tools such as BIM. And I completely agree with you that we have to look for more flexible ideas or more flexible solutions, because rigidity is something that is not quite good for any industry, I would say. So we have a last question for Adesh. And if somebody wants to ask more, we still have some time.
Sorry, I had one quick
Nick, you
point
can go.
on that.
Yeah.
No, very, very quick. Just to say that I think the pandemic means that change is accelerating and that innovation will become higher up the agenda.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Shall I proceed with the question, or we have some more comments from? No. Okay. So Adesh, this is for you. Is traditional waterfall project management obsolete in a continuous changing environment? I feel continuous change requires short planning horizons. Each of these short planning horizons will capture the immediate issues and would be managed in waterfall approach.
I think I'm going to be, I have not got the full gist of the question, but I got a sort of idea. And again, I come to this bipolar theory. There is nothing one-sided. There is nothing called the traditional versus agile. Agile is the new word which has come up. Because of the fact, the tradition, the waterfall, and let me just give you a very interesting point here, in my opinion. The waterfall is when your definitions, your everything is rigid. You understand what you want to do, and you develop based on design, everything. Fine, no problem. But within that fixed scope, no scope changes. Whenever you are not sure of the future, do not claim to be Einstein to know everything in the future. The modesty should prevail within the waterfall, saying, this is the area I know well. This is not going to change much in the front end. So therefore, I'm rigid here. I'm fixed. I'm waterfall. But the other areas where I need to get more data points, where I need to get more information, so the data points information is in future. Data analytics, business analytics. So there you should keep yourself like agile. And as you come to that point, you then create rigidity. So rigidity and flexibility are playing role one after another. It cannot be ever in today's context, just be rigid. Because rigidity, something you don't know, but changes are exponential. You should be humble enough to say, I don't understand how this design will take place. I'll wait for more data inputs and then take a view. So agility today is a new way of in project management. Agility is coming up, and the combination of agility and the waterfall, traditional, is what is called today hybrid project management. Hybrid, combination of waterfall and agility. They go combined.
Thank you, Adesh. I think you got the question quite right. And that was a very satisfactory answer in my perspective. So we have, I think that's the last question now, and that's to Christina and Nick together. Thank you for the beautiful presentation. How to overcome when you need to work together with one who has completely different vision of yours. For example, a new project manager joining to owner's team who try to kick you out. Wow. Who would like to go first?
I can. I actually experienced that once, to be honest. But I think I would like to differentiate again, if I may, and sorry to be a bit pedantic about the word choices. The big question for me is straight away, is it actually the vision which is different, or is it the values, which, Adish mentioned before, so are the values different about how to get there? And also the other question is, are the user requirements different? So I had it previously where I was working on a project as a project manager with the team, and the development manager changed. So that was obviously the people representing the client. And they brought a lot of different aspects to the table, and they were completely going down a different route in terms of how they wanted to market the property. So the property itself, or the buildings we were doing at the time, which was a refurbishment of 7 Victorian buildings in London, didn't really change, but it was how they wanted to promote it, how, as a development manager, they wanted to go about it. That has changed. So again, it's about getting to know your client in that instance. And I think, as Nick said, and I'm sure he will say it in a moment, have some coffee and have a conversation to really be clear about what is their vision, what do they want to get out of it, and make sure you create that relationship. Because at the end of the day, if you are willing to work with them, if your values align with their values, that's really important, I think as well, then I think it's important to understand what their drivers are. So maybe it's actually not the vision, maybe the drivers have changed, maybe suddenly it's more a financial driver or a program driver or something like that. That would be my response. Please feel free to comment in the feed if I didn't get your question quite right, or if you feel it's left unanswered. But I would like to hand over to Nick now.
Okay, so what Christina has said is very interesting. This is it's a big issue. I think this is Tomo, isn't it? Tomo Yuki. So fundamentally, this, if it's not dealt with fairly early on, does become the elephant in the room, and it will affect everybody, and it will stop the project working well fundamentally. So I would say what happens is, new project manager comes in, got different ideas. I think you have to try to work together, have a cup of coffee, sit in the tent, see if you can resolve it, and work together for a while. But if it's not going to work, then you have to go to someone higher up, the client. I know your question is about the client's PM himself or herself, but the client has to understand that actually there's a divergence here, and the divergence of objective or vision will cause a problem. Now, I have had a couple of examples of this, and ultimately what happened was one party had to go, and it was a painful divorce, if you like, but it had to be done. And the consequence of that was that actually all the other parts of the team worked much better, because they knew that there was this problem going on. So this is a very difficult issue, and people come at it from different viewpoints. And if the vision and the objectives are completely not on the same stage, then it will become a problem that can only be resolved by one party walking away.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Christina. Well, that would be very hard if one party has to go, no? So other than resolving the issue. But yeah, sometimes the road is not that sweet that we want to take. That could really happen. So as I said, that was the last question, but we have, a follow-up question to Adesh, I think. That's from Raymond. And I think Adesh quickly said about bringing Agile to project management. So now the question is, can we apply Agile project management principles in construction project management as well?
Certainly. Certainly, you can, but not in the area where you're clear in terms of the scope, what you want to do. But the agility can come place in sometimes in safety measures. Safety, you cannot pre-plan everything in advance. So as long as your mind is agile, and as I said, agile means open, it's not fixed, it's not rigid. So whenever you have that agility in construction industry, for example, it's quite likely that should be applied because you're constructing so many things. Within the framework of the rigidity or fixed plan, you need to know the design is frozen. You need to move in that direction. There's no change there. Scope change is a very big elephant to destroy the projects. So to that extent, you're making sure that you are waterfall. But agility, you should always keep as your shadow to go with you. Whenever the opportunity comes, and especially in the areas where you do not have enough data points, enough information. As you saw in the Norwegian slide, the information risk, both are interlinked. So agility is very important. You identify that in the early stage, that this is the area I need more. And have a time bound. You cannot keep forever to collect data. All the project and construction project managers take decision on partial information. Never full, never, and never will be. But how close could be 60, 70, 80 is a matter of your judgment. Thank you.
Very well said, Adesh, that it is actually the matter of our judgment. And I think the judgment really comes from experience. So you said in your presentation that I have 55 years of experience. People would call me a dinosaur, but I think we need dinosaurs in the projects because most of the decisions that we make in construction, be it planning, cost or risk, it's based on experiences and right set of judgment, and that comes with time. So we are so privileged today to have wonderful speakers today and who share with us their observance and also their experience today. What a wonderful session.
To correct you, you don't need resource, never. You don't need number of years of experience, people, ever. What you need, agile mind, irrespective of their age. So the 4 or 5 years or 6 years of wisdom or experience, which is more relevant even today, which has come out of the past, is what you need, not the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs only will have the irrelevant experience behind them. So you need agile mind. I am agile mind, so you need me. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Well, I wouldn't like to correct you. That would be something, but I would like to add. What I meant to say, we need agile dinosaurs.
That's right.
We definitely don't need rigid dinosaurs who would come and say, like, we have always done it this way and we're going to keep doing it that way.
Right.
We need flexible, but with some experience, because maybe they have seen some kind of problems that we can't even think about something. Like today, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Yeah, that's right, actually.
Agile, just for the sense of we should laugh, if the dinosaurs were agile, they will never become dinosaurs. The reason
Okay, agreed. Okay, so thank you very much. That was for today for the open session. Now we have the closing remarks by Brian. And would you like to add something, Brian? You mute.
So I wish we had all the time to talk about this. I know we touched on controversial topics, and just because we have different point of views coming from different experiences that we have. So just to give you a wrap up of what has transpired in the past 4 days. So we have been able to deliver 19 sessions of quality presentations and open forums to get the conversation started on how we can advance the construction industry to the next normal, and to the fact that we can talk about this continuously means that we need to get this conversation going after this. So for those of you who have completed the summit, that means 800 minutes or 13.33 hours of learning and discovery. And for those who are in the Philippines, that almost meets the annual credit units required for continuing professional development. So you can just, If we're just waiting for the final performance report of the summit, if we see that you met the 70% requirement of the attendance, then you will get those certificates, provided also that you submit you fill up the survey forms, because that is equally important when you submit your requirements, and then the rest of the instructions are emailed to you. So for the rest of for all those from other parts of Asia, Europe, North America, India, and the Middle East, we thank you for participating and making the discussion so lively and productive. And to the speakers and to my co-host and to the sponsors that we have, we can't thank you enough for making yourselves available to in all these 4 days of the event. And thank you for making yourself available to share your vision of a more collaborative, risk-sensitive, productive, profitable, quality-driven, safe, sustainable, and thriving construction industry. And I would like to just point out that as a construction project management professional, we have to keep on moving this industry in the next normal. So the summit is about to end, but the global initiatives and partnerships have only started to take shape. And we have a lot of that coming. And we are confident that we can continue these conversations in the follow-up activities that we will have. And as we end the summit, let me just suggest a few actionable steps that all of us can take, because we are going to do this again next year, and we have to talk about what steps we have taken to take this industry to the next normal. So I have 7 actionable steps. First is to have a project mindset that is leadership driven. So collaborative in form and substance, and risk sensitive across all phases of the project life cycle. So project management needs people working in teams to really succeed. So we have to take care of our people. So second is that we have to adopt a digital strategy. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be the best technology there is. We just need to make it appropriate to ensure that whatever digital technology we are adopting actually solves a particular problem for the purpose of enhancing and creating value out of the projects we are doing. Third actionable step, we are not just here to deliver projects. We need to keep in mind that the projects we deliver will affect the communities involved and exposed to its creation, delivery, and operation. So we need to keep in mind that as eco-professionals, it is our goal to transform our cities to be better. We can do this by a thoughtful consideration of our communities and environment in the design and construction projects, both now and tomorrow. We have future generations and our planet to protect. So fourth, for sustainability, we can take a more inclusive approach to greening our cities by using EDGE that was presented 2 sessions ago, last session. As a design tool and the rating system, we can make this as our starting point for pursuing sustainable projects. For quality, let's learn how to integrate commissioning into our project delivery to ensure that whatever has been planned for will be delivered. And sixth, consider learning construction more about the project management side. Have a vision of starting your own CM agency, get started and follow through that vision. We have partners like, of course, Build Quotient, I2P2M, Commissioning and Startup, EPCM Academy, and the many others who provide training to help us develop the skills needed in our construction management practice. And last actionable step is join organizations like the International Construction Project Management Association, which spread and celebrate best practices in design and construction project management. So, and if you are a student or a young professional, join our ICPMA. And this will definitely get you started with your career. Take active involvement in global initiatives that support the agenda of advancing the construction industry to and in the next normal. So on our end, what can you expect? No, we are continuing with this initiative to keep the discussions going until we meet again next year. So We will do that by keeping updated through podcasts and and social media based activities. And in fact, we just launched a podcast for advancing the construction industry to the next normal, and you can see that in the summit page. And in the next couple of weeks, we will be publishing the podcast version of this summit, so that you can be updated. So basically, that's it. And thank you to all. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to the participants who has attended this summit. And I encourage all of us to let's go forward together as we advance this construction industry to the next normal. So with that, we end this session, and we would like to see you again next year in the follow-up of this summit. Thank you and good night.
Let's clap. Let's clap. Buddy. Unmute and clap, clap, clap. All of you. Thank you for all the organizers. Not just congratulations. And to the leadership of ICPMA channel, you have to take the lead. And our best wishes to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adesh.
Thank you, Adesh. Good night.